Hi, everybody. It's Barbara Boshin. Thank you guys for joining us. I'm from Co-Merchant. We have a relisting service to help you get your Amazon listings over to Walmart. And we also have an automated keywording tool called Easy Key. I hope you guys will check it out. Chakra?
Thank you so much, guys. Thanks for taking time to join today, us and Cynthia. I have a accounting firm that's focused on Amazon sellers called Jungle Books. So we do bookkeeping, taxes, and everything accounting related, including CFO services if need be. So.
And tonight we have a special guest, one of my most favorite people for a variety of reasons. She's my COVID partner. She's a good friend. She's a bubbly personality. It's Cynthia Stine, and she is from eGrowth Partners, which is one of the leading consulting agencies for Amazon. And she knows everything there is to know about how you can get into trouble and how you can get out of trouble with Amazon. And I have personally can attest to this because 5-6 years ago, I tried to block it completely. I was suspended and she literally saved my life. So thank you again for the 100th time, but thank you so much. And thank you for coming on tonight. I know everybody's got a busy schedule and there's lots of things going on, but I know a lot of people were really interested in this topic because we've just become like slaves to Amazon. We need this, we need that. And like every morning I do my morning hygiene. I check my account health and I look at my feedback and I look at the voice of the customer. And, and then I wonder if my whole day is going to be derailed because I've got to answer something, right? I have a person who literally just one part of her job for the last 6 months has been chasing down safety documentation and submitting it and following up and submitting it and going back and forth. So, it's crazy. It's just, I just feel like I have another job, and apparently I was hired by Amazon and no one told me.
That's right. It literally is a full-time job, just keeping up with Amazon's, requirements. It's everything that you do that's what we would consider administrative. It's just mind-numbing. You can have full-time people. That's all they do. They're spending all the time, reconciling your shipments and dealing with Amazon saying, oh, I want this and I want that, and oh, this isn't working, and hey, this guy said your product is used, sold as new. I mean, it's really a hassle. I mean, most sellers just want to sell, and they don't want to spend all this admin time. And the latest thing has really thrown some sellers for a loop, and that's where Amazon is requiring testing data. And they're very, very specific about what they want. In fact, part of the frustration with all the different testing documentation, because it varies by category, obviously. But I will tell people, if you're just selling in one or two categories, you may not be aware, but basically just about every category on Amazon is going through this right now, or will be shortly. And Amazon does this in waves because it's even a lot for them to keep up with. So you may think, oh, home free, nobody's asked me for anything. And I tell you, they're going to ask you. So, this is very frustrating for people who do wholesale, because again, they're not the brand owner and they have to go track down some of this data. Mm-hmm. And of course, for the retail arbitrage guys, they're just completely, in trouble, because depending on what the product is, like let's take food and health and beauty, which are definitely very, Amazon is very concerned about them, and electronics. I would say those would be the three big categories that are really suffering right now. Toys to some degree. And so, I mean, I have clients who've literally gotten hundreds of requests, and all of them take time, as you know. And while some may be simple, like just, give me basically the consumer sheet that basically says, this product has been tested and here's what's in it. But a lot of them, especially in, like I said, food and supplements and, health and beauty, they want fairly sophisticated documents. And there's been a new standard, an ISO standard that was adopted, and you're going to ask me which one it is, and I don't remember, but you'll see it on the form they send you. Don't worry. But the thing about this requirement is when you go out to these various labs, like Who Can Help Me, right? Most of them don't have it on their website. What they have on their website is they have the older standard that this new standard replaced. Now, what we're finding, because we've called and talked to a lot of labs on behalf of our clients, is that they are all compliant with the new standard. It's just not on their website.
Okay.
So, and then, okay, you find a lab that has the standards, and that's great. And then you send your product in. And if you're, private label, this should be part of your normal operating procedures anyway. You should be testing your product on a regular basis. And we usually say with each batch, you should be doing your own independent tests. And these are not the tests that the manufacturer might be doing for you. These have to be from an independent third-party lab that's certified. And they're
and everything, and allergic reaction,
they're very detailed. So they're looking for things like, does it cause an allergic reaction? If it's a topical, does it make your skin break out? And, are all the ingredients that you say on the label are in there? Are they actually in there? And are they in there in the proportions that you claim? So that's another problem is, I'll give you an example of why this is so important, because this happened to a friend of mine years ago. He was, selling his own like shampoos and conditioner and stuff. And he had a US based, company that he really liked that would basically, pull it together for him, right? It was a compounding lab, for lack of a better word, I guess. But, and then of course they put his label on it and all of that. So he's been very satisfied with their service. And he routinely would test it though, because he's like a very serious guy. Like he was in it to win it, right? And so he was not going to fool around with this. So he tested it routinely every time he was, about to get a huge shipment from his, manufacturer. And one time he had it tested, and it was full of lead and toxic chemicals. I mean, seriously, freaked him out. And he's like, what happened, right? I mean, this was part of why he was using a U.S. company, was he didn't want to take a risk that he might, perhaps with a Chinese manufacturer, of having impure ingredients and all of this stuff. So
shortcuts,
he discovered it. Went back to them and said, hey, what the heck happened here? Here's my test results from his independent third-party lab. Is that dog bothering you guys? I can go inside. It's
no,
loud.
it's I don't.
Oh, okay.
It's coming. It's in your head louder than it is on the tape.
Okay, good. Because I'm like, shut up. I'm thinking to myself, it's the neighbor's
This is something
dog.
we have with the cat every week. But anyway, nobody can hear it but me. But it keeps going.
But so he went back to the lab. He talked to them, and they did it. They took the product back, obviously. So it never made it to the Amazon warehouse, thank God. And they discovered what they had done is they had imported some of the ingredients from China, and they were impure. So anyway, they paid for their mistakes, and all turned out well. But just think what might have happened if that product had gotten to Amazon and somebody, had gotten lead poisoning or some other irritation from this product. And so that's part of the reason why Amazon is doing this. They've been under a tremendous scrutiny, as you know, and pressure publicly to make sure their products are safe. And they've had some really horribly embarrassing publicity, about all the children's school supplies that were full of lead. That was last year, I think, and things like that. And so this is why they're doing it. I just want to explain. And so when people say, oh, can you help me like get out of it basically? I'm
Right,
like,
right.
no, it's not going to happen. You have to provide them exactly what they want. And they're very specific about, what has to be on the report. It has to be signed, has to be on letterhead. I mean, there's a lot of little persnickety rules about it. And so, I had one client who just did one recently. Everything looked good. We were getting ready to turn it into Amazon, and I realized that some of the pages still had 2020 on them, right? Other pages had the right date. And it was just, they just hadn't updated their software, right? Because it's all, generated.
It's like pages and pages and pages
Yes.
of boilerplate. So
Yes. And so they had forgotten, not my client, but the lab. And
Yeah.
so we had to go back and say, look, you have to make this right and put the right date on it, or I'm screwed, right? They're going to think that this test was done in 2020. And so there's a lot of rules around it. It's expensive, and especially for private label manufacturers. And it is a cost of doing business now if you want to sell on Amazon. Now, for some other products, especially people who do wholesale, I mean, they can usually get the documentation they need from the brand. Sometimes it's right on the brand's website. The requirements are different, but if you're selling electronics of any kind, anything with a cord or a plug, and if you're selling
Is that for electrical shock that they're worried about? Okay.
You would be surprised at how many products are apparently catching on fire. And so some of this is what I call competitive BS. They buy a product, they complain, look, it caught on fire, and you're like, really, it's a USB cord. But anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't have any. Yeah.
I mean, it just generally doesn't generate enough heat to catch on fire. But I will tell you this. I had a client who had one of those claims, and he's mad, and he's like, oh, these people are all lying. But there were a lot of returns because it sparked or caught on fire. He's like, no, our product is safe and all this stuff. Okay. And so we're filling out the questionnaire. Amazon also has a long questionnaire that they usually require if you're actually taken down for safety versus voluntarily getting the data ahead of time. And so they're like, oh no, we've never had problems with Sparks. And then they literally say to us, well, we did have this problem with Sparks, but that was a few months ago. And I'm like, dude, your buyers are saying that it's catching on fire, and that's probably because they see sparks coming from it, Anyway, so that he literally had to make some significant changes and get a new provider for that particular component, which was literally just the cord between the charger and the iPhone or whatever it was. And he got a new manufacturer for that, but Amazon required him to do a safety test on the entire thing. In other words, meaning not just the component that was causing problems, but they had to certify, the lab had to certify that the entire product was overall safe. That is a more expensive test, and it requires a lot of different standards. And so where people get frustrated and confused also is because they're like, I don't know what standards apply to my product. And so I just want to tell people that if you call the labs, they know. And you can talk to them, and you can, and Amazon has a whole list of labs up on their website through their supplier network. And so those labs, they work with Amazon sellers all the time. And so they generally know what Amazon wants. So yes, you have to get on the phone and talk to them, but which people sometimes, oh, I don't have time, I don't want to do that. Like, okay, but you really need to make sure that everything Amazon is asking for is covered. And usually it's not one test, it is 10 or 20 on the product. So that's why
it might be one document, but they're testing for, you're saying there's multiple, well, there probably are multiple documents, but they're testing for several things. They're testing for lead. They're testing for,
Well,
things falling off, security, like all the stuff, like, my
yes,
experience has been toys by
yes.
and large.
And with children's toys, there's quite a few things, like you said, of course, lead and things. And by the way, the most surprising things have lead in them, like things you would just never think has lead in them. And so most people think, oh, this toy doesn't have lead in it. And they're shocked to find out that it does. But maybe it's within the legal limits, or that kind of thing. So, but yeah, and then there's safety, which is like, if a child plays with it, are they going to get sick? Like I have a client we're working with this week who has rare earth magnets,
Mhm.
and they're not toys. These are industrial products sold to scientists basically for a specific purpose. So these
Okay.
are not meant to go in your home. These are not
Mhm.
fridge magnets. Okay.
These aren't the ones that you put them together and they go, but yeah.
No. And so they were frustrated because they were in the industrial and scientific category, and they believed, it was their contention, that they did not have to go and provide all this safety testing. And we had to tell them, yes, you do. Because the problem is, you may be an adult using it, but if there's ever a child around, or if you're doing this at home, and so many of us are working at home, so whatever you're using the magnet for at home, and a child eats it, which they like to eat shiny things,
Mhm.
it can literally destroy their intestines, and you have to do surgery to get it removed. It's not like some other things where it might kind of just pass through. These are seriously scary magnets, and so I'm like, dude, you still have to do the testing. Amazon's not gonna see it your way, and it's not a category issue. It's the fact that it's a magnet and a really
Mhm.
strong one at that. And so, these are the things that I'm glad that Amazon is asking for, because they are actually getting rid of a lot of unsafe products.
Mhm.
But it's really hard. So if you're not the brand owner and it's not your product, and you still have to provide this data, like I've had clients have to send a very, very commercial product, right?
Mhm.
Well-known big brand, and they've had to send it in for their own testing because they couldn't get the required certification from the brand, where the brand says, I've done this testing and we've done it right. And so, because Amazon will accept that. So if you're buying from like a Procter and Gamble, and they're producing their product at an FDA certified
Mhm.
facility and all this stuff, you don't have to test the product normally, but sometimes you do, because you can't get that data. And just try calling a big brand and saying, hey, could you send me that information, please?
Yeah, I
And
know a
so,
number of people have just had to give up, and they're like, I guess this is going to eBay, or, I know it's safe, I know it's tested, I just can't get to the right person in the timeline.
right.
So that
And,
makes me
and there's,
ask you a question. Why is Amazon coming to me, little person, to them, I could be 10, 20, $30 million. I'm small beans. If I have a Lego set, why don't they go to Lego and just get the whole database? Why would they have to come after hundreds of sellers all over the place? And I'm not sure if they're going, if I sell a Lego set number 7582 and you sell it, if they're asking both of us, it's unclear. It's, from what I've heard from my
yes,
vendors, it is not multiple sellers being asked for information, but maybe sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
well, Lego is a good example, okay, because that is a big brand. And, you're saying, well, doesn't Amazon already have this information from Lego? And they probably do.
Mhm.
And so sometimes they won't ask for it, and other times they will. And I haven't quite figured out the rhyme or reason of it, except for this is also part of them vetting to see if you're selling authentic product. So, and so, yeah, you could say, oh, yeah, I'm selling
That my
Lego 1, 2,
invoices though,
3.
I mean, I'm not arguing with you, but wouldn't that be my invoices? Like, this is a hump, sometimes to go and get all this stuff. And like,
Well,
we have we had, I guess, 150 of them so far. And we've gotten all but 12 of them accomplished. And the last 12 are like, well, we need this in color, not black and white. And I'm like, what now? You need it in color. Yeah, it needs to be in color. So they have to go back. My vendor only has it in black and white. So they have to go back to the lab and get them in color. And it takes not a day, not a week. It takes a couple of weeks because that lab has to do it for everybody now for all the things that they are testing. So, you know, and there's only so many labs in China that test children's toys. So you end up getting in this backlog. So we have a number of items that aren't for sale right now as we wait for color copies.
Well, and that's okay. So you've actually touched on multiple reasons why Amazon may want this from you. One is not all of the labs in China are trustworthy, and they're easily bribed and they fake documents. So there's that. And so it has to be a lab that Amazon recognizes, which is why I really, you know, I say to my clients, go pull a lab off Amazon's list. Don't buy trouble going with someone they don't know.
To save $5.
But here's the other problem. So there are some, bad actors out there, I guess, who are very good at forging documents. And so an invoice isn't good enough for certain items anymore because they're just too easily duplicated, easily faked. And Amazon's had a real problem with that. But then the primary reason is Amazon's looking at how easy is this product to counterfeit, and are we having a problem? And that's how they kind of prioritize things. So if they're currently having a problem with Lego products being counterfeited, then yeah, they may come down on sellers really hard. But if they're not having any problems at all, then it may be that they just say, hey, send me your invoice, or they'll only come and talk to you if there's a buyer that complains and says, you know, this Lego toy is not really a Lego, or this Lego toy, you know, hurt my child or whatever. And so it's a combination of things. And that's why, for example, in the last couple of weeks, we've had several rare earth magnet people, right? Because Amazon sees it as a problem right now, and they've made it a priority. And so that's kind of, all of these factors go into it. And you know, everything in Amazon's done by an algorithm. So they set up the algorithm to get certain kinds of information. But what I want to tell everybody who's watching is eventually Amazon is going to want safety documentation for every product they sell on the platform. That's the future. It may take them a while to get there, but that's the future. And so I tell people, look, if you're planning on selling, you know, you go to ASD and you buy a pallet's worth of product and you're getting ready to sell it, you know, that is the time, actually, at the point of purchase, to get, you know, concessions from the provider, whether it's the brand or an authorized distributor, but that basically says that they will provide this information for you, and then you just take it and store it, or you can send it to Amazon. Now, as some people have also noticed, that when they go to list a new product, sometimes Amazon is requiring that as part of the listing. So again, it seems to be dependent on the category and how urgently the need is. So, but if you look at food, for example, and health and beauty, they've had to publish their ingredient list forever, right? So this is just another step where now Amazon's like, okay, prove that those ingredients are actually in your product and that your product is safe. And why are they doing this? You know, you'd like to think they're doing this out of the goodness of their hearts because they care about their buyers. And I know that they do to some degree. But a lot of this is what Amazon always does, which is liability shifting. So this is them shifting the liability from themselves to you, the seller, so that if something goes seriously wrong, like the hoverboards that start to explode and things like that, you know, and they can show that they did their due diligence and they vetted the product ahead of time, you know, they're basically going to be off the hook. And guess who's left on the hook? The seller. So, and then the seller has to turn around and sue the manufacturer, or have a, or have a clause in their contract with the brand that says, if your hovercraft explodes, you'll
Mhm.
cover me if we're sued. And so all of this gets to be really legalistic and very difficult for a seller who's selling, hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of products,
Right.
different products to manage. And so it really would have been nice if Amazon had given us more time and
Mhm.
more warning. And like I said, then the remedy is also very expensive, because these lab tests can be thousands of dollars. I mean, a typical would be anywhere between $2,000 and $10,000, depending on what's being tested. And and having to do that on a regular basis with your products. So for a private label manufacturer, well, that is the cost of doing business. But for a wholesaler, and
Mhm.
and God help the retail arbitrage guys and the online arbitrage guys, or even the drop shippers, they are in a world of hurt, because a drop shipper will list an entire catalog. They
Right.
may
And
literally
have
have a
no means
catalog.
to get. Now you can
Yeah.
call the company, and technically they need to, as a consumer, you can say, hey, I bought this product. I'm a little sketchy about, I'm only really familiar with the compliance documents so far, because they haven't started doing any of our food so far with toys. And you can call the company and say, I'd like to see a child product safety certificate. I'd like to see your testing documentation. I don't believe this is, but obviously it's a lot easier if you have a direct relationship with them. One of our vendors has got to have 10,000 to 20,000 different SKUs, and they got so many requests for all these documents. They said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put it all online in a big bag database, and here's your username and password. Go get whatever you want.
Yeah.
You look up the title, it'll all be by our item ID number, and you just can go look it up and download it. Have fun, because the human doing this is just taking too long, and sucking up
Oh,
all
yeah.
the time.
Well, and the big brands will do that, and that's helpful to you as a seller. And so if you're dealing with a major brand, they probably do already have it on their website, or they have a process for getting it out to people quickly, but then there's the brands, who are just like, look, get out of my face, right?
Well, there's
But
so that's probably good. So the Lego people should be able to go to Lego and access these documents. They're a big enough company that it should be on. I mean, I know two of my friends are, one's wholesale, one's RA. Well, the one person was not, I actually know the second person, actually not my friend. The first one is, he said, what are all these things? I ignored it, and now they're shutting them down. I'm like, you ignored a compliance request from Amazon. He had 700 to
yeah,
now work his way through or get rid of. And they were all like Mattel and big names. And I know, because that's his wholesale account. And then the other person had 698, so 700 again of RA stuff.
mhm.
They were just like in a world of hurt. And, RA doesn't know what to do with, and they don't know any of this. They don't know from Adam, like documentation and invoices and all that kind of stuff. So, but they
Well,
should
and
be large, like, what's the remedy for this if you're, I feel bad sometimes, because Amazon like built this ginormous opportunity, let everybody and their brother in, people who barely know like how to, like just learning from the ground up and learning what they can to scramble and scrabble, mom and pops that don't know all this nonsense. And then, figuratively speaking, a week later, like, okay, now act like you're a company with 30 employees and have all these resources, and go get, like, and people are their heads are spinning. I'm like, it's like you let everybody, let all these people on the plane, and started telling them to fly it. It's like, I don't know how, I'm a passenger, this is what I signed up for, but it's hard. So I feel bad, because a lot of people just are trying to get by and not be multi-million Amazon sellers, just try to get, enough income because they're disabled, or, stay-at-home mom or something like that. And I'm flabbergasted every time, like, this new level of nonsense. It's not nonsense. It makes sense. I get it. But like I said, if it's a Lego product, go ask Lego for it. They have a whole database. They can get that to you in one day, and and if you
Well,
have if you have a person that you think is doing counterfeit, then you need to go about that, whatever. But so
mhm.
it's just hard
Well,
for people.
it is. And, when I wrote my infamous, RA is dead blog that absolutely nobody ever lets me forget, years later, dudes, it's been 5 years, and people still will say, oh, yeah, you're the girl who said RA is dead. Anyway, but that was based on, my contact inside Amazon was telling me that, they were no longer actively supporting RA, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's allowed, but they'd gone from encouraging it and supporting it to just,
Do it at your own
allowing
risk.
it. But everything they have done in the last few years has been to push sellers to be more professional, to be larger, higher
Mhm.
volume, and also to do either wholesale or to be a brand. Those are the two models that they like, and you can tell because they support them wholeheartedly. They give you tools. They help you all they can. There's brand registry. There's all these things that they have done
Right.
over the past few years, which are specifically designed to discourage, like RA, because they get a lot of complaints from RA products, and
Yeah.
part of that is because the people who are selling them are newbies, like we've talked about,
They're
and
not
they're not.
familiar. Like, can I use it? Can I send this? Somebody asked me today, can I send this coffee
Yeah,
cup in bubble wrap? I'm like, no, it
right.
won't. If you drop it, it's going to break. I mean, you have to, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly. And so, and that's why they really prefer, when they say professional sellers, like really professional businesses.
yeah.
And and drop shipping is another model where they allow it,
Hmm.
but they don't really like it. And again, they're subtly and not so subtly discouraging people. And again, because you have a lot of problems if it's not done correctly, and a lot of people aren't doing it correctly, and then the buyers are unhappy.
And just to
And
clarify, drop shipping has like two categories. There's the marketplace to marketplace drop shipping, or the buy it on Walmart.com and sell, and fulfill it on, that's marketplace to marketplace, but you could buy it in, at Home Depot and ship it to somebody and that kind of thing. And then there's the drop shippers that, exist because their stuff is ginormous, like couches and outdoor furniture. And, you've those, so that drop shipping, do they look askance at that type, which exists because you can't FBA a couch. Well, you probably
well,
could, but
no, wait, and let me just clarify, in case there's anyone watching who doesn't know this, but drop shipping where you sell it on Amazon, but you're buying it and fulfilling it from eBay or Walmart or any other what Amazon would consider a retailer is actually strictly forbidden.
yes,
And if
but
Amazon
it's
catches
done.
you, it's a problem, right? So that they don't even call that drop shipping. That's just not
Against
allowed.
TOS, yeah.
Right. So drop shipping, when it's done right, yes, sometimes it is really large items, like Barbara was saying, like a couch, but sometimes it's really small items too. I mean, I have clients who drop ship, boxes of Keebler cookies because they're servicing offices or hospitals or
Okay.
things like that. And so if you do it right, the company that you're buying it from is buying it directly from the brand, and they are a reputable drop shipper with a good reputation,
Mhm.
and they are out there. So you see this a lot with medical supplies, office supplies, because who can actually keep a million SKUs in
Right.
stock, right? Nobody. So and so this allows the seller to have a huge catalog, but there'll be items on that catalog that maybe sell once a year, if that often.
Right.
And then there's the others that are selling like hotcakes. And so, from the seller's perspective, it's great to drop ship because you don't have to have the inventory, and store it somewhere. But you have to deal with the returns, and they're on you, right?
Right.
And it can get very expensive that way too. And then there's the problem that when Amazon asks for invoices because they want to make sure your product is authentic, you don't have them. like I had a client, I mentioned the Keebler cookies because he was taken down. He sells office supplies, and he had like 3 or 4 different Keebler cookie types that he was selling, but had never sold a unit. I mean, the listing had just gone up, and so he hadn't sold a single unit. He had absolutely no invoices. But he was able to provide his contract between him and the drop shipper, which was a very, very reputable drop shipper that Amazon knows. So he was fine. But again, that can be a real problem though if who you're dealing with is not large and not buying directly from the brand. So what if your drop shipper was buying from a distributor who was buying it from the brand, and you have all these steps in between? It is almost impossible to fight off an inauthentic claim in cases like that. And so that's why I tell people, if you're going to drop ship, again, you have to be professional about it. You have to do it right. And you have to be sure that if you get an inauthentic claim, that you can get something from your distributor or your supplier, I guess, that will satisfy Amazon that your product is actually authentic. And, that's hard to do unless you're dealing with the biggest and, i.e., the most expensive, relatively speaking. That from some guy who says, I get these cookies for 50 cents. You're going to get them from a well-known wholesaler or distributor who's going to charge you 75 cents.
Yeah.
And so those are the things that sellers have to think about now. I mean, when you and I were selling, we just could throw almost anything into a box and send it to Amazon, and that is not true anymore. And but yes, compliance is a huge burden on sellers, particularly small sellers. And this is just another way that Amazon is basically saying, get with our program or get out of here. Like all those people who are having so much problems, with their IPI, right? Amazon changed everything because of the pandemic. And so now that, again, the smaller sellers who are selling less volume and don't have as high a turnover on their items are being punished. And it's very hard for them to do SBA. And because Amazon doesn't really want their business. Again, they want the big guys who are doing huge pallets, who are turning that inventory in a month. That's who they want. They want the fast turn guys. And, and so every time something like this comes down, I just think, because it's, again, one more burden on the seller. And like I said, they're doing everything they can to push all but the most serious sellers out. I mean, even when they raise their fees and all of that stuff, again, someone whose margins are, teeny tiny, these fees are going to kick their ass. And so, again, you have to be a seller who has a good enough margin that you can survive Amazon, adding an extra 3 to 8% to your bottom line, or to their bottom line, on your back.
Yeah.
I mean, I have sellers who were just so outraged when the fees came out because some of their products literally went up an additional 8%.
Yeah, and one of ours did, and I was like, let's see, what does that mean? I did the math, and I'm like, and we're raising prices, and eventually this product may not survive if this is where the rate's going to be, because as I raise prices, there's other competitive products that maybe they're not going to, but I can't do what we're doing and only make $3. It's kind of crazy. So I had to jack it up a little bit. And it may be that, like, I never liked large products because I'm a small person. And when I was doing RA, the idea of carrying strollers around, I'm like, oh my God, I'm just going to be so exhausted to just get 2 strollers in a car. It's ridiculous. I don't have the build or the strength to like get heavy. So I gravitated to small things because, smaller things, because I could handle it. And it's sort of like the same thing here. It's just like, I'm always diversifying. I'm always looking at what the heck are they doing? And is that fire too hot over there? Do I want to get burned? Am I going to get singed? And, and in this case, I was thinking about the exact thing the other day with the fees. I'm like, this may not be a product that, it's been a decent product for us, but maybe it's not going to be a year from now. Maybe it's too big for them, or maybe. And then I thought maybe I can package it differently. But then I'm thinking, we sell hundreds and hundreds of these. Am I going to package them all? I could probably. They're all it's stuffed animals, so it's all air. So I could probably suck the air out of them or something. But just all these things you think about, like how can I work within the system and use the system without it like rolling over me like a truck? How about pesticides? I have heard some. I mean, a couple of a year ago, everybody had to take the pesticide. Like, yeah. Everybody to do this. I understand it's a trick. It's a trick. I took it.
Well, so this is actually U.S. regulation and not Amazon. So, we're being told we're frozen. I'll turn my video off. I'll keep talking. This is in response to your, Uncle Sam, your tax dollars at work. Okay. And if you actually go out to these websites, the U.S. Websites that deal with pesticides and deal with hazmat and items like this, you will see that they actually do categorize these products. And I'm talking about T-shirts from Under Armour and just all kinds of weird things are pesticides. And you're thinking, this doesn't make any sense. But they are, and part of it is because of how they label themselves. Like if they're using the words antimicrobial or antibacterial, or people who are selling hand sanitizer or antibacterial soap are selling pesticides according to the government. And so Amazon has to enforce this, and that's where part of the ridiculousness comes from. And so I do tell everyone, do take the pesticide test. But sometimes they're asking for more. And there are other requirements. Like if you're going to sell something that's now considered a pesticide that was never a pesticide before. Let's see if my video is back. And this kind of thing, as annoying as it is the cost of doing business, because this is a government regulation. This is not Amazon, being persnickety. They are having to follow the rules. And so, if they say your product is a pesticide, it's a pesticide. And, and it doesn't matter what category you stick it in. In fact, don't be dumb. Don't try to move it into a different category, hoping that will somehow remove the pesticide problem from your. No, don't do that. They get very angry when sellers do that, and it's not about category. Although certainly some categories are more at risk than others. There's articles of clothing that are considered pesticides because they have something built into the fabric to keep you from your sweat from smelling, right?
Right, antibacterial.
Yeah, so a whole bunch of Under Armour shirts are pesticides. And so that's why I tell people, as ridiculous as it may sound, if Amazon tells you you're selling a pesticide, you are. Now, sometimes you can just fix your listing. Like maybe you made claims that you can remove, and that will remove your product from being considered a pesticide. Sometimes we can do that. But for a lot of products, you actually can't, because they're literally on the U.S. website as being listed as a pesticide. And if that's the case, then you are SOL.
Yeah. And a lot of times you aren't able to change the listing anyway, because like if it's a major brand like Under Armour, you're unable to actually make the updates. So then you're just SOL. So one of the things that as is Amazon's tendency, one of the things that drove me crazy, and Mike has a question like, why don't the bots look at the category? So maybe we should ask that one first, since it's consistent with the pesticides.
But
You know,
wait, ask the
wait, so
question
he's
again.
saying, before I ask my other question, which is rejection of documents, with bots, they're just picking these things. A lot of times they're saying it's a pesticide, but it's not a pesticide.
Right.
You know, just there's something of just do a little bit more due diligence and not make you have to go back and because it's Amazon. There we go. I answered the question for you.
That's right. And a lot of times it is something that's either on the listing that's visible, and you're lucky if that's the case because you can figure it out. I know Mike, you're trying to be reasonable, and Amazon is not reasonable. Of course they could do that. They absolutely could. They just have to be compelled to do it though. There's nothing in it for them, basically.